Sorry, it's just a bit slow today. There we go, you're live.
Thank you, Martin. Yes. Members, welcome. We've obviously got the Harbour Committee meeting now. Can I just ask you to confirm your minutes, that you've read the minutes, and do you have any comments, basically? Or are you happy to accept them? Thank you, Shirley.
I go that as well.
Okay. Anybody else got any points? No? Okay, thank you very much. I invite members to declare any interest they might have in the matters on the agenda. Graham.
If declare an interest as a councillor for Ventnor regarding Ventnor Harbour.
Okay, fine, thank you. Right, do we have any public questions? I haven't been informed of any.
We haven't received any, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Good. We now move on to the finance reports. Is anyone going to give us a report on that one, on those?
I can do that, Ian.
Thank you.
Members that were on the committee last year will remember that this is an annual report that we have to provide for the two harbours, Ventnor and Newport, which are statutory harbours. This is a requirement of a statutory harbour to produce a set of figures and an annual report, as we've done in previous years. So the reports are attached. I won't go into them in huge detail because we did actually have the finance reported at the last committee. Many of the details are the same. I would just like to point out there are a couple of wrong dates on the report, which is my fault. I'm sorry about that. On paragraph 11, it should read the 1st of July to the 11th of August. And on paragraph 15, it should read March 2020. What these reports show is the activities for the previous financial year up until March 2020. They have been approved by the council's auditors, Ernst & Young, and we are just seeking from yourselves approval of these reports or any questions that you might have. I don't know whether there's any questions or any concerns. As I said, we did report on some of these issues at the previous meeting when we presented the finance previously.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any comments about vote? Councillor Perks, off you go.
Yep. What I would, well, first and foremost, I'd like a detailed breakdown of the accounts for Ventnor Harbour. And another first and foremost is that reading through the report, it's at times it's called Ventnor Haven, then it's called Ventnor Harbour, then it's called Ventnor Haven Harbour, and I would just like to get it clarified that when you just call it Ventnor Haven Harbour or Ventnor Harbour or stick to Ventnor Haven, whichever, but just it's going from pillar to post and you get confused as to what they're really supposed to be talking about, whether it's Newport or anything else. So that was point one. And the other thing is that with a £15,000 increase on the contracted services, which is quite a significant amount, you know, and we'd like to know, given that now Cheetah Marine, who were managing the harbour, and now it's been taken over by our own harbour master, there's less work having to be done over there, and yet the price has gone up 15,000. So I would like some clarification because obviously the people in Ventnor can see the writing between the lines, that it's in the report. It says, well, it's not making any money, it's costing money all the time, etc., etc., etc. And we, the people in Ventnor, and everybody I've spoken to, do not want to see it offloaded for a stupid amount. If it's going to be open, it should be open. So we need to know what's going on. So that's why we need clarification and a full set of accounts. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Grant. Alec, I'm sure you can sort that out for Councillor Perks in time.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, these reports have to be done in a certain format, which aren't the easiest to read. So I'm more than happy to do that for Councillor Perks. Most of that increase has been as a result of renegotiation of the seaweed contract. But of course, we can provide some further detail.
Okay, thank you. Has anybody got any other points they would wish to raise? Shall we move on?
Could I,
Go on.
can I just come back quickly on that for Alex? It's a long-standing issue that in the commercial world, and I'm not meaning that derogatory or anything else, but rents, etc., and costings go down as well as up. But in this case, it goes up year on year on year, and now, as I say, £15,000 is a big increase by anybody's standards. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to the next item then, which is the report of the Senior Harbour Master. Okay. Where are we?
Good afternoon, all.
Jonathan, yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, all.
Sorry, Chair, can I just take you back a stage, just to that previous report? Sorry, Jonathan. We've got a recommendation in that report, just asking for members to accept those accept those financial reports. I don't know whether members want to vote on that.
I think yes. Sorry, yes, we should have done that.
Sorry.
Members, I will propose that we accept the report. Can I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Is there anybody? No. Do we all accept the report? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I think,
Graham?
I think although it goes against the grain for me, I like to either vote for or against. But
Yeah.
I think on this one, I'm going to abstain because I disagree with it. Thank you.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay. Right, let's move on then. Senior Harbour Master Jonathan, you're on.
Good afternoon, all. The first part of the report is the Get Well plan. That's sort of been moving along. The main thing that's changed is the HRO, which has been going very nicely, moving forwards, becoming into force shortly, if everything goes according to plan. As part of that, we can now, our draft general directions, we've gone through with Marico, with the draft ones we've got. So the next thing for them is to put them through legal, and then they'll be sort of shared around for public consultation. Other than that, as the harbours have been a little bit strangely staffed at the moment due to the interesting times we live in, most things have been moving along. So that's sort of the Get Well plan, where we're moving along with that. The next one is the Harbour Master reports for the last quarter, so from December to the end of February. The main risks that we've still got in the harbour is the COVID-19 and the restrictions and the operating issues that has brought up. With staff wise, in December we were still manning it 3 hours either side of high water, but after the 12th of January they've been furloughed, so the only member of staff is myself, but daily checks have still been continued. The works that's happened, you all took part in your Port Marine Safety Code training that was done by Marico, our designated person.
Yeah.
The statements regarding the use of the harbours under restricted operating positions have been reissued on the 6th of January. Talking about waste earlier, we were inspected by the MCA for our Harbour Port Waste Management Plan, which they are happy with, and have confirmed it for that's fine. Generally, other than that, we've been inspecting it and most things have been all good. Are there any questions?
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
Ian?
Go on, Brian. Yeah.
It's just the harbour revision order. Are you saying that's not been passed by Parliament yet? Because it says.
Sorry, that has come into force from the 10th of March.
Okay, because you didn't. I got confused by what you said. Okay.
Okay. Matthew?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry for being a bit late coming into the meeting as well,
Okay.
as usual. Jonathan, thank you for your updates and stuff. There's just something I wanted to bring up. I don't know if really this is the relevant time, but I thought I'd just mention it now while we're talking about the I suppose health and safety really. Is that there was an incident a few weeks ago where an elderly lady fell off the quayside into the river and was pulled out by some local passers-by. It was luckily not at high tide, but it wasn't mud either. So there was water in the river, and it was right at the point where the just along from where the propeller is, the other side, I suppose, of the river to my side of the river, as in Riverside Centre side of the river, but the I suppose the harbour side of where the bit that goes through to Coppins Bridge is. So it's sort of where the water fountain is, and it's probably the only bit, I guess, where there's not railings at all round the quayside. Now, so my question is, has it been considered previously for railings along there? Now, I understand that right on that water's edge, there's probably some historic reasons that there's not railings, but considering all the other work that we've done to get the quayside as safe as possible, and with railings around much of it, I wondered whether there's any appetite and any way we could look at making that slightly safer, because, you know, luckily there were passers-by to pull this lady out, and I know where there's water there's danger, but it is a place where it is quite easy for someone to topple in, and I'm surprised, in honesty, that we haven't had more incidents. So I just wondered whether you're aware of that incident and whether you've sort of thought about that at all in any other way. Thank you.
Yep. The incident that happened on the 17th of last month, I believe she fell in the same side as the Bargeman's Rest, just after the Key Arts Centre by their wheelie bins, and she was recovered halfway down, just in front of the pub. There are railings on the majority of that area. It's just where the bins were. From the reports I got from the volunteers at the vaccine centre, she just seemed to be wandering along and forgot to and just walk straight off the edge. She wasn't hurt, but I'm afraid I haven't had any reports from the Coast Guard or the police that attended.
Okay, in that case, Jonathan, this is a separate incident because it was definitely on my side of the river. It was a local resident that lives just around the corner who was one of the people that retrieved her, and he was actually walking nearby when he saw her topple over. So I think this must be obviously there's been a lot more activity down there recently with the vaccine centre. You know, and I know it's not any different to how it has been before, but this must be a second incident then in quite a short space of time. Because it was absolutely certain that she fell over on my side of the river. So I think maybe that is something we need to just think about going forward, something that we may need to address. I mean, I'll try and provide you with some more information that might be helpful, perhaps.
That would be useful, because the reports I got were from the volunteers at the vaccine centre. I had sort of reports from about 3 of them, and the majority said it was the far side, but I did have some reports that it was this side, so it could be that the information I got was confused. So if you have the person's details that recovered her, that would be really useful.
Okay, no problem. I'll get something to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Steve?
Thank you. Sorry, just as that started, just as Matt began to speak and was talking of an accident stroke 2 accidents, I happened to be reading the report and it says reportable accidents, none to report. I'm just wondering why or how, if there were accidents of that nature, they weren't listed in the report.
If you, they're dangerous occurrences near misses, so they are just above that, that they were reported that She wasn't injured, but it was an occurrence that was that happened.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was reading it backwards. I was getting to that bit next. Actually. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Has anybody got anything else for Jonathan? Graham?
One thing was on page 15 was the lunch that Jonathan's been out to on the 4th and the 5th and the 13th of January. But that might have been a spelling mistake. It could be launch.
Launch. I think you did have lunch on those days. But
Slightly worrying that I had to pump myself out 64 times afterwards. Yeah, my apologies for that.
The other thing was, Jonathan, now that you've taken over the day-to-day, if you like, running of the Ventnor Harbour Haven, I wonder if you could give us any update of any new ideas that you'd come up with to turn it around and make it a profitable asset for the council and the members of the public, with regard to actually doing more things down there, as per, you know, letting extra boats in, etc., because it doesn't seem to be advertised anywhere at all. And the other thing is I'd like to see the full report of what we're going to try to do, but they've written it off and said no, it's going to be too expensive. Well, we actually, I forget how many hundreds of thousands we've just been given, or the council's been given, for coastal erosion, etc., etc. And I've had somebody look at it, and they estimated between 200,000 and 300,000 would turn the westward arm back out to sea, and which would cut probably about 80% of the seaweed coming in. So if you work it out, 300,000 plus, which would again be written off, but put that up against what we pay out every year with regard to pumping the seaweed back out over the seawall when it comes back in on the next tide. After 4 years, the harbour situation would be a lot cleaner, and we wouldn't have to fork out, and the haven would become profitable. And then with some outlying buoys, I know Alex and I discussed this at times, but if you didn't rent all the equipment and everything else and you bought it, the chains and the weights, etc., on the harbour, which would obviously be taken in during the winter, but through the summer months they would be something there that would earn money, because people coming out from Poole Harbour or the Hamble or wherever would get to the south point of the Isle of Wight and be able to moor up somewhere overnight before they sail across the channel the next morning. So there is potential down there to make money, but it needs to be taken, you know, the bull taken by the horns, and use some of the money that we've just been given by government to safeguard and make good the Ventnor Haven. And the people that are doing the inspections and recommendations now are the very same people that did it in the first place. It was then reduced and not altered in very much at all, and they was told in the offset it was never going to work because of the westerlies coming up the channel. So why have we not got anybody else taking a look at it to see if somebody else comes up with some fresh ideas? There's harbours and docks all around the world, and, you know, seaweed problems all over the world, and sometimes things just have to be changed and a bit of money put into it, but in 3 or 4 years time you get your money back. The other thing was, now that Jonathan is down there and taking charge, I wondered if he could let us know anything else that he's come up with ideas wise, and how many times he actually goes down there to inspect the haven, harbour haven, whatever. Thanks very much.
I can probably answer that. I mean, in the first instance, with regards to where we go from here with regards to Ventnor Harbour, we've obviously been spent a number of years looking at possible solutions to Ventnor Harbour and the seaweed. And if it was straightforward, we would have solved it by now. We have got the report, as Graham mentioned, from Royal Haskoning, which concludes that it isn't that straightforward. If members want us to revisit that report and consider contracting it out to a further company to tell us possibly the same things that we've heard before, then we're more than happy to do that if that's what the view is. But this has been going on almost since the harbour was built. And as Graham quite rightly says, the only way this is going to be resolved is by a very significant capital investment in the harbour, or through some form of grant funding. When we looked at grant funding before. It was very limited. We were in Europe at that time. Whether things change as we've moved out of Europe and there may be new funds available to us, then that is a possibility which we could look at. But whilst people talk about it very kind of randomly, I've yet to see any report or any suggestion of how that problem could be resolved that's cost effective. But I'm more than happy to talk to anybody, or even to we've even speaking to Ventnor Town Council about this. But yeah, more than happy, as Graham suggested, to put any extra work into trying to resolve this issue, because it's been ongoing since the harbour was built.
Okay.
With regards to, just answer the second part of the question, sorry, Ian. With regards to the questions for Jonathan, we have agreed with Graham to provide Graham with a monthly, as the ward member, with a monthly update on Ventnor Harbour. And I think most of those questions that he'd asked can be answered in that monthly update, which Sean and Jonathan provide and will continue to provide. I think we've provided one so far, Graham, haven't we? But we've only just started that process.
Yeah, the first one, all right, but that was just the basics, just of what we were going to do, but nothing's happened since. But what I would just like to say, with answer to Alex, if I can, through the chair, is it's okay, very well, saying we'll get somebody else in, which is going to be very off-putting for the rest of you listening in. But obviously, the Koenig report 2 or 3 that they've done is there in the public domain, so you can't get it. Nobody would be expecting to come along and give you exactly the same answers, because having read the report, you could say to them, well, no, we've got this report, we want something different to come out of this. Then you wouldn't be throwing money, good money against bad. You'd come asking somebody to come up with a completely different outlook on a thing to cure the problem.
Yeah, I think Sean's just offered to circulate the report so all the members can actually see it, and I think that's a good idea, and we can pick it up at the next meeting. Like,
if we're all here.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's right. We're here. Yeah. Okay. Right. Has anyone got anything else for Jonathan?
I didn't get an answer to mine actually, as to what he was doing to improve it down there.
I think you're going to have to give Jonathan time.
All right.
To look at that and come back to us. I think that's only fair, rather than put him on the spot now. Okay.
But if he was doing it daily, we would know.
I can say on one thing with the channel with the mooring buoys outside of the haven, they have been tried in before I joined the council 6-7 years ago. The amount of where the mooring chains and buoyage was taking, they were having to be replaced yearly. And because there isn't a full-time member of staff there, because there isn't enough visitors to warrant it, they weren't actually making a net profit, because getting the ground chains installed and removed every year, with only a very limited number of boats using them, because they couldn't access the harbour because there's no way of getting ashore because there's no taxi service or similar.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Right. The next item is the.
Sorry, Chairman. I believe Shirley Smart wants to say
Shirley.
something.
Yeah, sorry, Shirley. Go ahead.
I don't know whether this is the right place to bring it up. I was just going to ask about the proposed dredging in Newport. How long it's going to take, and when it's done. I think it was done in the 1970s last time. What the initial improvements will be for the harbour.
Okay.
Please.
I can pick that up, Chair.
Oh, hi, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, it wasn't on the agenda today because we were still in the final stages of contract negotiation and award. As you'll have seen, there's been a press release now issued saying the dredge
I picked it up from.
will go ahead. You're quite right, Shirley, it was last dredged in the 70s. We've awarded a contract to Jenkins Marine. They are looking at starting week commencing the 29th of March. The duration is estimated at 10 weeks. Upon completion of the work, they'll have removed approximately 20,000 tonnes of silt from the harbour, which was built up over the last 35, 40 years. And the outcome will be we have a improved channel depth and constant channel depth between the sort of the southernmost navigable part of the river, so essentially just to the underside of Medina Way, dual carriageway, and just to the north of the Premier Inn. And we've got I've got letters drafted to go to all adjacent businesses and properties, which will be hand delivered next week.
Okay.
Thank you, Sean.
Anyone else want to pick up on that? No. Thank you, Sean. Okay. The next item is the annual report and accounts. I don't intend to go through it page by page, but I'm assuming members will have read it. Do any of you have, yeah?
Sorry, that was my mistake. I've covered that in the first point in terms of you voting on that annual report.
Yeah.
But actually, what we probably need to cover now is what was actually on the first point, which was just a general update on finance, which is on pages 9 and 10. So apologies for that. Would you like me to do that?
Yes, please, Alex.
Yeah. I mean, we do this at most of our cabinet reports. So just have a look through the current forecasts for year end on each of the two harbours. And this is very similar to the previous pattern, obviously because of the COVID experience that we've had this year. But the first set of accounts that you've got are for Newport Harbour, and they show the expenditure and income, and they show a suggested forecast of those two items up until the end of this financial year, which is obviously the 31st of March 2021. I think it points to note on Newport. I mean, the only really significant point to note is obviously we are seeing a forecasted downturn, as you would expect, in berthing fees. The berthing fees are considerably down, around about sort of £30,000 down on previous years, which I think because of obviously the lockdown and the COVID experience is to be expected. So the overall net position on the harbour is a £25,000 loss on the budget, which I think, considering the year we've had, it potentially will be quite an achievement. I think outside of that, because of this year, there's nothing really exceptional to report on under Newport. I'm happy to take questions at the end. With regards to Ventnor, obviously Ventnor's a much smaller operation, as you know, much smaller costs and much smaller income. I think, as we alluded to in the annual report, the only thing that probably comes out as an exception, I mean, we're forecasted for a slight overspend, but the only real thing that's probably worth pointing out is that obviously is the contracted services, where we are projected to be about £15,000 over on that budget, and I think, unless Sean tells me otherwise, I think that's largely related to the increase in the seaweed contract, which was extended for a further year.
No, that's correct.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, on what you'll see on Ventnor, which is somewhat different to Newport, is that the income isn't down as much, because the lion's share of the income comes through the fisheries plant, which is paid on an annual basis, and then there's only a very small amount of berthing fees, largely from the local fishermen down at Ventnor. So there's very small differences there, but we'll continue to report on this at each of the meetings. But that's where we think we're predicted to be at the end of the year. I don't know if anybody's got any questions at all on that.
Can I have a question, please, Ian?
Of course.
Yes, go ahead, Brian.
On the Newport one, obviously on the income, you've got leases. Is there going to be any looking to revise those leases, look at them, possibly offer extensions, and by the way, put the prices up?
Sean may want to comment on the detail of this. I think the simple answer to that is yes, very much so, Brian. Sean's doing some work on that already.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with the advent of the new Harbour revision order, we had the ability to grant leases longer than 3 years and for non-marine related purposes, which was a major restriction before. However, we've got the Newport Harbour Masterplan, and I've been liaising with Chris Ashman because there are a number of leases, I think 8 in total, which come to the end of their term in this current calendar year. And we've been looking at how we actually approach those, because obviously what we don't want to do is grant a long lease which could potentially stymie a particular element of the agreed master plan and regeneration of the harbour. So we have an agreed approach which does have a commerciality attached to it, but we are seeking to maximise the annual income, although we probably won't be granting considerably longer leases, as I've said, so we don't impact on the regeneration. So yes, that's all in train, and we are getting valuations for those properties, and we will be negotiating with the existing tenants.
Do you know what sort of timescale you've got to finish that work?
Well, it's ongoing because leases expire at various points during the year. Okay. So I've got eight leases that expire between effectively now and the end of this calendar year, and I think we have a further 7 which expire next year.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Graham, you had a question?
Yeah, just some clarification from Alex. He's just said that the contracts are yearly, but I thought that the Ventnor Harbour Haven was one for 2 years. So by my reckoning, if it was renewable in March and it's only 1 year, then it must be up for renewal now. And I'd like to see details of what the lease is going to entail. If it's a new one, that's going to be granted to Cheetah Marine, or have I got the dates wrong?
Again, Chair, if I may, the contract for seaweed removal in Ventnor Haven is a 2-year contract, and we're just coming to the end of year 1, and it will expire on the 31st of March 2022. A further 2 years was granted through the council's procurement process on the basis we were looking at potential disposal with Ride Harbour as a package, and as we know, a report went through Cabinet recently on the future of Ride Harbour, so we now need to undertake a piece of work to ascertain the medium to long-term future of Ventnor, and as part of reviewing that, we'll need to consider what we do in terms of future seaweed removal beyond the 31st of March 2022. So we will need to review that, but you are correct, Graham, it is a 2-year contract.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, anybody got anything else on that issue? Okay, we'll move on. The Newport master plan. I take it you've done the harbour revision order. You've covered that, haven't you, Alex? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Jonathan covered it, but it probably is worth just mentioning again, just because of the significance of it. In as far as obviously, I think we've been reporting since this meeting started, an ongoing, it's nearly there, it's nearly there, it's nearly there. Yeah. The delays with the MMO. I mean, as Joseph Rennie from Legal just pointed out to you, the HRO has come into force. It came into force on the 10th of March. And as Jonathan said, that now allows us to start working on the directions. So I think, I'd probably just like to say at this point, a great deal of thanks to Chris and his team, to Sean, and also to the legal team for getting that through and having the patience of saints, to be perfectly frank.
I'm gonna reciprocate. I'm afraid it's a mutual congratulations event here, Chair. Alex and Sean in particular have been very diligent in this process and have been proverbial dogs with bones as far as addressing the concerns of the MMO and getting towards a satisfactory conclusion. In terms of the broader agenda on the master plan, Chair, if I might.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please go on.
That's fine. Clearly, the HRO is a significant milestone because the levels of interest that we have in the original publication of the master plan is significant. Obviously, that's been tempered slightly by the pandemic position, but we are able now to enter into constructive negotiations regarding those interests in the different prospects within the harbour. So a real step forward, and obviously we can update the board as those negotiations progress. The most significant point really is around the opportunity to grant the leases, but also to attract funding from government in relation to the infrastructure, continued infrastructure needs that are connected with individual sites. And also members will recall the master plan ambitions regarding a cycle and footbridge linking the two sides of the harbour, for example. The shorter term effort continues, Chair, in terms of the flood risk assessment work that we're undertaking, which was advised by the Environment Agency when we consulted on the master plan, and that work is in train. I'm expecting a report in April that will then enable us to bring the master plan forward as a supplementary planning document, which will again further de-risk the site. The government's announced the Levelling Up Fund. Whilst that's welcome as an opportunity, the first round for that is connected with projects that can actually begin during this financial year. So projects in the harbour that would fall into that category are few and far between. There is an ongoing schedule of improvement to the harbour walls, which obviously Sean is leading on, and we do have an opportunity potentially to bid to the fund for that particular works if it can be commenced during this financial year. But that being said, obviously the council has a wide range of regeneration ambitions, and clearly we will be competing with every local authority for Levelling Up fund monies. So we will need to have projects that are confident of delivery, and also provide an impactful delivery within the timescales the government has suggested. But in short, Chair, I think this is a significant milestone, and obviously we're in a good place with the master plan to capitalise on that now going forward. Thank you. Take any members' questions, Chair.
Chris, could I just ask, what sort of timescale are we looking at to implement the master plan?
Yeah, the master plan's in 3 phases, Chair. Phase 1 is year 1 to 5, and identifies a range of opportunities within the master plan to bring forward individual sites, and also the necessary infrastructure improvements that I was touching on earlier on. The second phase is years 6 to 10, and year 3 takes us up to year 15. The larger projects, such as the new cultural centre proposal, will obviously be towards the back end of that time frame, but there are opportunities that we're confident will come forward now in phase 1.
Okay, Matthew, you had a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, yeah, to say to Chris and the officers and the other officers that have been involved in obtaining the Harbour revision order, I think it's a monumental moment to have achieved that, and I think there's been a lot of obstruction to try and perhaps prevent that being granted, and I think it's so important for the future of the harbour to have that revision order secured now, and to be able to offer those longer leases and attract the investment that we really want to see in the harbour. I've always been for the harbour master plan. I obviously had my issues with the sea close housing, but everything else I've always been broadly for, and I very much support the harbour master plan. The only thing I'm going to take a cheeky 10 seconds to add in, I'd love to see the first phase of this include Newport Football Club moving to Sea Close Park as the very first seed of regeneration of Newport Harbour. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, okay. Does anybody else have any questions for our director? Shirley.
Sorry to be a pain, but we were told at some stage, and who knows whether I'll be around to listen to it, but we were told that we would have an update of the whole scheme, and then obviously, I don't know, several things happened and it was always gone on to the next meeting. I thought that, I assumed, you know, that perhaps we were going to have it today. We're obviously not. But as I say, if I get return, I'm wondering if one could actually have an update as to what the up-to-date plan actually looks like now.
Sorry, Shirley. So, Chris, can I suggest something? Can I suggest we have a separate meeting, if you like, where you and your team can actually lay out the project for the members to basically have a look.
Of course, Chair. Absolutely, not a problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ian.
Does that suit everybody else? Yeah.
Ian, are we going to do it before the election or after the election?
We'll do it before.
Good idea.
Okay. Well, we'll think of a date. I'll liaise with Mr. Minns, and I'm sure we'll come up with a date for all of this.
Yeah. Can I just ask one question of Chris, very quickly? You said the grants in the financial year. Do you mean this current one? So only to the end of? Wow. Okay. Good luck with that then.
Okay. If no one's got anything else for Mr. Ashman, we'll move on. But Chris, thank you very much for coming along and telling us what you did.
Not
okay,
a problem.
and we look forward to the complete briefing in time.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Righty. The next item is members' question time, but we haven't had any members' questions. I just think, do we have any other business really? It's not on the agenda, but if anyone's got any burning issues they'd like to talk about. Oh, Graham.
Sorry, Ian, we're going.
You're not allowed to talk about Ventnor Harbour.
No,
okay?
I was just on the accounts. Can somebody just explain, or just get rid of it, what that floating pound is that's floating around on transport?
Not with you.
Because if you read through the accounts there, and if you go through it,
oh, I see.
And it's just £1. It's just, and I can't make out why, for rhyme or reason why it's there.
Okay. So, Jonathan, any ideas?
My mileage.
Sorry? No. Come on, answer.
The pound could be mileage charged.
You're breaking up, Jonathan. We can't hear you. Or can't make out what you're saying. Okay. Perhaps you'd like to ping us an email if it's of significance. Okay.
I think it could be my mileage that I've actually put in for this. Yeah.
Okay. Is it only me that can't hear Jonathan, or are you all having a problem?
No.
Okay. Shirley, go on. You want to say something?
Well, rather cheekily, could I ask Matthew not to disappear, or Alex, because I need to talk. I've been talking to some taxi drivers. Nothing to do with here, but I'd like to talk to you. I was hoping that Julie was going to be here.
Okay. We're not moving it again.
I can probably answer your pound question if you really want me to. I expect what it is that the costs of employees and transport is obviously a percentage of Jonathan's time across the 3 harbours that he manages.
I see. Yeah.
I suspect it's just the percentage.
All right. Okay. Right then, members. If we have nothing else, I'll say thank you to our officers for pulling the meeting together and briefing us, and good afternoon to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.